Good morning, guys. Okay, so we're going to do something a little different today. I'm going to go ahead and start us off with just our image, but we are going to be doing dodecahedron circle number 3. That is for chapters 5 and 6. We've read all the way up till the end of chapter 4 so far. Today we're going to be going over 5 and 6. So we're going to focus in on some vocabulary words and their meanings. We're going to end up writing down the words first in these 3 spaces, and then we're going to draw pictures of the meaning of those words on our right-hand side, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and start the story. It says, the giant picked up the trembling Sophie with one hand and carried her across the cave and put her on the table. Now he really is going to eat me, Sophie thought. The giant sat down and stared hard at Sophie. He had truly enormous ears. Each one was as big as the wheel of a truck, and he seemed to be able to move them inwards and outwards from his head as he wished. I is hungry, the giant boomed. He grinned, showing massive square teeth. The teeth were very white and very square, and they sat in his mouth like huge slices of white bread. Please don't eat me, Sophie stammered. The giant let out a bellow of laughter. Just because I is a giant, you think I is a man-gobbling cannibal, he shouted. You's about right. Giants is all cannibals and murderful, and they does gobble up human beings. He is a giant country now. Giant is everywhere around. Out there us has the famous bone-crunching giant. Bone-crushing giant crunches up 2 whoopsie-whiffling human beings for supper every night. Noise is ear-busting. Noise is crunching bones go crackety-crack for miles around. Ouch, Sophie said. Bone-crunching giant only gobbles up human beings. From Turkey, the giant said. Every night, Bone Cruncher is galloping off to Turkey to gobble Turks. Sophie's sense of patriotism was suddenly so bruised by this remark that she became quite angry. Why Turks? She blurted out. What's wrong with English? Bone-crunching giants say Turks is tasting ever so much juicier and more scrumdiddlyumptious. Bone Cruncher says Turkish human beings has a glamourly flavor. He says Turks from Turkey is tasting of Turkey. Of course they would, Sophie said. Of course they would, the giant shouted. Every human being is diddly indifferent. Some is scrumdiddlyumptious and some is uckslush. Greeks is all full of uckslush. No giant is eating Greeks ever. Why not? Sophie said. Greeks from Greece is all tasting greasy, the giant said. I imagine that's possible too, Sophie said. She was wondering with a bit of tremble what all this talking about eating people was leading up to. Whatever happened, she simply must play along with this peculiar giant and smile at his jokes. But were they jokes? Perhaps the Great Butte was just working up an appetite by talking about food. As I am saying, the giant went on, all human beings is having different flavors. Human beings from Panama is tasting very strong of hats. Why hats? Sophie said. You's not very clever, the giant said, moving his giant ears in and out. I thought all human beings is full of brains, but your head is emptier than a bundungle. Do you like vegetables? Sophie said, hoping to steer the conversation towards slightly less dangerous kind of food. You was trying to change the subject, the giant said sternly. We is having an interesting babblement about the taste of human being. The human being is not a vegetable. Oh, but the bean is a vegetable, Sophie said. Not the human being, the giant said. The human being has 2 legs, and a vegetable has no legs at all. Sophie didn't argue anymore. The last thing she wanted to do was make the giant cross. The human being, the giant went on, is coming in billions of different flavors. For instance, human beings from Wales is tasting very whooshly of fish. There is something very fishy about whales. You mean whales, Sophie said. Whales is something quite different. Whales is whales, Giant said. Don't gobble funk around with words. I just now give you another example. Human beings from Jersey has a most disgustable woolly tickle on the tongue. The giant said, human beings from Jersey is tasting of cardigans. You mean jerseys, Sophie said. You're once again gobble-funking, the giant shouted. Don't do it. This is a serious and snitching subject. May I continue? Please do, Sophie said. Danes from Denmark is tasting ever so much of dogs, the giant went on. Of course, Sophie said. They taste of Great Danes. Wrong, cried the giant, slapping his thigh. Danes from Denmark is tasting doggy because it's tasting of Labradors. Actually, that is true. Labradors do come from Denmark. Then what do the people of Labrador taste of? Sophie said. Danes, the giant cried triumphantly. Great Danes. That's true too. Great Danes do come from the country of Labrador. Aren't you getting a bit mixed up? Sophie said. It's very mixed up, giant, the giant said, but I does do my best, and I is not clearly as mixed up as the other giants. I know one who gallops all the way to Wellington for his supper. Wellington? Sophie said. Where is Wellington? Your head is full of squashed flies, the giant said. Wellington is in New Zealand. The human beings in Wellington are especially scrumptious taste. So says the welly-eating giant. What do the people of Wellington taste of? Sophie asked. Boots, the giant said. Of course, Sophie said. I should have known. Sophie decided that this conversation had now gone on long enough. If she were going to be eaten, she'd rather get it over with and done with right away than be kept hanging around any more. What sort of human beings do you eat? She said, trembling. Me, shouted the giant, his mighty voice making the glass jars rattle on the shelves. Me, gobbling up human beings? This I never. The others, yes. All the others am gobbling them up every night, but not me. It's a freaky giant. I is a nice and jumbly giant. It is the only nice and jumbly giant in giant country. I is the big friendly giant. I is the BFG. What is your name? My name is Sophie, Sophie said, hardly daring to believe the good news she had just heard. Okay, so for chapter 5, that was it. We have a couple of words in here, and we're going to come back to those in just a moment, but let's be listening for those funny words that may or may not always have the definition in the quote-unquote human language. The giants. But if you are so nice and friendly, Sophie said, then why did you snatch me from my bed and run away with me? Because you saw me, the big friendly giant answered. If anyone has ever seen a giant, he or she must be taken away hip switch. Why? Said Sophie. Well, first of all, said the BFG, human beings is not really believing in giants, is they? Human beings is not thinking we exist. I do, Sophie said. But that is only because you have seen me, cried the BFG. I cannot possibly allow anyone, even little girls, to be seeing me and staying at home. The first thing you'd be doing would be scuttling up or yodeling the news that you were actually seeing a giant. And then a giant hunt, a mighty giant look-see, would be starting up all over the world, with the human beings all rummaging for the great giant you saw, and getting wildly excited. People would become rushing and bushing after me with goodness knows what, and they would be catching me and locking me into a cage to be stared at. They would be putting me into the zoo or the bunkelman house with all those squiggling hippodumplings and crocodilians. He means hippopotamus and crocodiles. Sophie knew what the giant said was true. If any person reported actually have seen a giant haunting the streets of a town at night, there would most certainly be a terrific hullabaloo across the world. I will bet you, the BFG went on, that you would have been splashing the news all over the wonky world, wouldn't you, if I had wiggled you away? I suppose I would, Sophie said. And that would never do, said the BFG. So what will happen to me now? Sophie asked. If you do go back, you will be telling the world, said the BFG. Most likely on the telly bumpkin box and the radio squeaker. So you will just have to be staying here with me for the rest of your life. Oh no, cried Sophie. Oh yes, said the BFG, but I am warning you not ever to go whiffling about out of this cave without I is with you. Oops. Okay, so, sorry. I is with you, or you will be coming to an ucky-mucky end. I is showing you now who is going to eat you up if they is ever catching even one tiny little glimpse of you. The big friendly giant picked Sophie off the table and carried her to the cave entrance. He rolled a huge stone to one side and said, "Peep out over there, little girl, and tell me what you're seeing." Sophie, sitting on the BFG's hand, peeped out of the cave. The sun was up now and shining fiery hot over the great yellow wasteland with its blue rocks and dead trees. "Is you seeing them?" BFG asked. Sophie, squinting through the glare of the sun, saw several tremendous tall figures moving among the rocks. Here's a picture of them. About 500 yards away, 3 or 4 others were sitting quite motionless on the rocks themselves. "This is giant country," the BFG said. "Those is all giants, every one." It was a brain-boggling sight. The giants were all naked except for some sort of skirt around their waists, and their skins were burnt by the sun. But it was the sheer size of each one of them that boggled Sophie's brain most of all. They were simply colossal, far taller and wider than the big friendly giant upon whose hand she was now sitting. And oh, how ugly they were! Many of them had large bellies. All of them had long arms and big feet. They were too far away for their faces to be seen clearly, and perhaps that was a good thing. "What on earth are they doing?" Sophie said. "Nothing," said the BFG. "It's just moochling and foochling around and waiting for the night to come. Then they will be all galloping off to places where people is living to find their suppers." "You mean to Turkey," Sophie said. "Bone Crunching Giant will be going to Turkey, of course," said the BFG. "But the others will be whiffling off all sorts of flung-away places like Wellington for the voodoo flavor and Panama for the hot-y taste. Every giant is having his own favorite hunting ground." "Do they ever go to England?" Sophie asked. "Often," said the BFG. "They say the English is tasting ever so wonderfully of cod scallop." "I'm not sure if I quite know what that means," Sophie said. "Meanings is not important," said the BFG. "I cannot be right all the time. Quite often I is left instead of right." "And are all those beastly giants over there really going off again tonight to eat people?" Sophie asked. "All of them is guzzling human beings every night," the BFG answered. "All of them excepting me. That is why you will be coming to an ucky-mucky end if any of them should ever be getting his gogglers upon you. You would be swallowed up like a piece of pumpkin pie, and in one dollop." "But eating people is horrible," Sophie cried. "It's frightful. Why does someone stop them?" "And who, please, is going to be stopping them?" asked the BFG. "Couldn't you?" Sophie asked. "Never in a pig's whistle," cried the BFG. "All of those man-eating giants is enormous and very fierce. They is at least 2 times my wideness and double my royal highness." "Twice as high as you?" cried Sophie. "Easily that," said the BFG. "You is seeing them in the distance, but just wait till you get them up close. Those giants is all at least 50 feet tall, with huge muscles and cockles alive-o. I is the titchy one. I is the runt. 24 feet is puddin' nuts in the giant country." "You mustn't feel bad about it," Sophie said. "I think you're great." "Why, even your toes must be as big as sausages." "Bigger," said the BFG, looking pleased. "They as big as Bumpelheimers." "How many giants are there out there?" Sophie asked. "9 altogether," answered the BFG. "That means," said Sophie, "that somewhere in the world, every single night, 9 wretched people get carried away and eaten alive." "More," said the BFG. "It's all depending, you see, on how big the human being is. Japanese beans is very small, so a giant will need to gobble up about 6 Japanese before he is feeling full up. Others, like the Norway people and the Yankee Doodles, is ever so much bigger, and usually 2 or 3 of those make a good tuck-in." "But do these disgusting giants go out to every single country in the world?" Sophie asked. "All countries excepting Greece is getting visited some time or another," the BFG answered. "The country which a giant visits is depending on how he is feeling. If it is very warm weather, and a giant is feeling as hot as a sizzle pan, he will probably go galloping far up to the Frisbee North to get him an Eskimo or 2 to cool him down. A nice fat Eskimo to a giant is like a lovely ice cream lolly to you." "I'll take your word for it," Sophie said. "And then again, if it's a frosty night and the giant is frigid with cold, he will probably point his nose towards the swiggling hotlands to guzzle a few hot tots to warm him up." "How perfectly horrible." Sophie said. Nothing hots a cold giant up like a Hottentot, BFG said. And if you were to put me down on the ground and I was to walk among them now, Sophie said, would they really eat me up? Like a whiff swiddle, cried the BFG. And what is more, you so small they wouldn't even have to chew you. The first one to be seeing you would pick you up in his fingers and down you'd go like a drop of drain water. Let's go back inside, Sophie said. I hate even watching them. Okay, so that was the end of chapter 6. But we've had several different kinds of words in here. I'm going to add one of our first words, and then you're going to have to find me 2 other fake words or made up words. So that way you can add what you think their definition might be according to the story. Okay? Let's start with our first one. So scrumdiddlyumptious is a really big word, right? It's right here. Scrumdiddlyumptious. It's a really big word, but do we really know what it is? Well, let's read the context around it. It says, Bone Crunching Giant says the turkey is tasting ever so much juicier and more scrumdiddlyumptious. Well, scrumdiddlyumptious in that context sounds like it has to do with something that smells good or tastes good, right? So let's add our word first. So scrumdiddly, and I'm going to put a dash because I can't fit it all in there. So scrumdiddlyumptious. Well, if something tastes good, right? So we can put tastes good. And then I'm going to draw a little apple here because I think an apple tastes good. All right, you've got 2 more spaces to fill in. Again, find one of those made up words that you like, add them over here, and then add a small picture of what those things mean. Please make sure to also add a small description like tastes good and then your picture, okay? If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you next time. All right, bye guys.